today I wanted to talk about the last painting in the Frogs and Beds little collection, and this is what it looks like. So you can see here it's a frog and it's doing like the same face as the scream, and it has some writing which says, "I want to talk," but the sentences won't come out, and it's just gotten out of bed, like it can't sleep because it's so panicking, so it's just like gotten up. And the reason these paintings all link together is that they were initially, well, the first one was inspired by the Frida Kahlo painting where she's at Henry Ford Hospital. She's just had a miscarriage and then she's surrounded by 6 different items that represent what she's thinking and feeling. So I also then painted a frog in a bed, but I couldn't think of 6 things because I realised that they were all just different ways that I felt like I was failing. And then a few weeks after that I showed the painting to a friend and they pointed out that I wasn't a failure because I'm alive, and that made me reconsider how I viewed success and failure. So I felt a lot better. But what happened during this time is that I was also really struggling with having conversations with people, and basically I'd like lie in bed before going to sleep and rehearse a conversation that I wanted to have with someone the next day, and some of them were like serious things we needed to talk about and some were like really not that significant, but I'd lay there and like play what I was going to say over in my head, and then the next day like none of that came out. So then I felt like a failure for not being able to get sentences out. However, I was already feeling like a failure, as we can see on here, like I talked about in the other video, because of like job situation. And like every day this kind of feeling of failure made me feel less confident, so it was harder to talk. But the more harder it got to talk and the less sentences that came out, the more I was feeling like a failure. So this was just like a cycle that was going on, and that's why I painted this painting. And now there's a lot of backstory behind this one. It's kind of hard to talk about, but anyway, I mean obviously it would be. So talking is something that I guess I've always kind of struggled with. And I remember being at my first primary school back in Poland and I just wouldn't speak to the other children. So I would either shake my head or nod or like occasionally whisper, and that was just it. And the other thing I remember from being a child is that I was fine at home, but whenever we visited family, even if they were close family, I think it would take me like a good couple of hours to be comfortable around them before I could talk and play and like interact. So yeah, that was a thing. And then we moved to England, didn't really know the language, but the kids at our new primary school were really helpful, and they just like tell us words and we could just repeat words after them. So speaking at that primary school was fairly simple. And then I moved to high school. High school was horrific, and I really struggled to like make any close friends. Like there were people I'd talked about whether we'd done our homework, but it never got really deeper than that. And I was never like invited to things that happened outside of school, and was always just kind of like on the outside of friendship groups. And then I moved to sixth form at a different school and made really good friends there, but I still remember being quite awkward, I think. And in the summer between the 2 sixth form years, I remember going on Google and searching for things like how to make friends and how to have conversations, and I guess it helped a little, I think it did. And then I moved away to go to university, and that made it a lot easier because previously people were used to me not talking a lot, so on any given day, if I'd suddenly started to speak loads, it would have just been really weird, so I just didn't. But when I was around a whole new set of people, I could kind of like recreate myself. So that made things a lot better. But then I was away for most of my second year at an eating disorders unit, and when I came back to do second year again, I found it really difficult, especially around things like pre-drinks. Like, I remember just sitting there and watching groups of people interact and being like, how are they doing this? Because I could have conversations with people, but they'd have to be like fairly structured, whereas these people were just like throwing words at each other and it made sense to them, like, I don't know. But anyway, and then I graduated, and I think in the years after I graduated, I'd finally kind of learned how to be like normal and sociable and like make proper friends with like deeper connections. But I still have times where I find conversation difficult, obviously. So anyway, fast forward to summer last year, I was staying at a friend's house and just telling a story that I thought was completely like normal. And then her girlfriend, who I'd only quite recently met at the time, asked me at the end if I'm autistic. And I was like, no, like absolutely not. Like, what do you mean? Like, of course not. But the thing is, I had actually asked myself the same question maybe like a year before that, and I spoke to my housemate at the time about it, and he was like, absolutely not, like that's ridiculous, what even are you thinking? So I was like, okay, that's definitely not it. But after we had that conversation last summer, I went away and did some research, and it turns out that I actually just hadn't really understood what autism was. And the more I researched, especially when I found like real life accounts from people who were women and they were late diagnosed and they were high masking, and everything suddenly became so relatable and it started to make so much sense. So this whole talking and like struggling with socializing thing is just one aspect of it. There's a lot more other reasons why I think I might be autistic that we don't need to talk about today. But what happened after I'd started to research was that I was also watching a lot of like very in-depth videos where people discussed quite intricate dynamics of conversation differences between neurotypical and neurodivergent people. And because I was thinking about it so much, I think it actually made it harder for me to then have conversations with people like out in the real world because I was overthinking everything that I was saying so much. And the other thing was that over time I was starting to talk to my friends about this, and some people just didn't believe me, and that was so like crushing and horrible, and that knocked a lot of confidence as well. So that was already going on, and then this whole like job loss and other job loss situation happened, which is how we ended up in a position where this got really bad, and it got so bad that it became a painting.